Long Distance Short is continuing on the quest to unwrap the mysteries behind staying connected through gifts. Natasha, Director of Digital Marketing at Gift Baskets Overseas, has managed to coax a special guest onto today's episode. The founder, CEO, and Chief Gift Officer at giftbasketsoverseas.com, Dmytria Peregudova, is here to answer one burning question in the business industry: are gifts taxable? Stay tuned to hear what the man behind the leading international gift basket company has to say about gifts, taxes, and how your company can make the most of each and every gift you send.
So I'm starting the recording now. Hi, Dima. Thanks for joining us for this podcast episode.
Hello, Natasha. Thanks for having me.
Today we are going to talk about gifts and taxation. We often receive questions from customers regarding what kind of gift expenses can be tax deductible. People ask about corporate gifts sent to employees, to business partners, to associates, to customers, and even personal gifts, such as gifts to relatives. Could you please share what you have about that?
Sure. So there are a lot of tax laws, and I'm mostly going to talk about the US tax law in the context of that. I've consulted with a number of accountants on the matter, and I've learned that it's not so simple as to just consider any taxation to be universal across different gift types. So the nature of the gift and the gift recipient actually matter here. So if the gift is given to a client versus the one given to employee, those are two different situations. Also, the type of gift itself, whether that's a product sample, a swag that's branded with company logo, or just unbranded gift. And those types of gifts would basically dictate the way the tax deductions would apply in the US tax law. I'll give you some examples, I guess, and maybe that will clarify. So in general, the single gift deduction that is given to a client is limited by $25 US. And $25 is basically the amount you can deduct for a standard gift that you send to a person from your business that is registered in the US. So that amount looks kind of funny today because a lot, that came from way back, I think 70s or 80s when that was decided. And since then, it wasn't really changed. And so like today, for $25, there's not a lot you can do. But it's worth pointing out that it's just the value of the gift we're talking about. So if there's a shipping involved or a packaging that costs extra, some special branding, gift cards, so on, that's separate from the value of the gift. And that can be deducted in addition to the gift value. Say, for example, you're sending a bottle of wine that costs $25, and it costs about $20 to ship and $5 to package. Total expense is $50. If you're sending it to a client, you should be able to deduct the whole $50 because $25 is a maximum value you can deduct for wine, and then $20 will cover shipping. That's also a deduction, and then $5 will go to the packaging. So $50 will be fully deducted. But yet, if the wine costs $50 and then plus some shipping, then you would only still be able to deduct $25 for the wine and whatever the shipping is and the packaging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Another question is about timing. When can one write off gifts as corporate expense? Is there any particular holiday-related pattern to this, or can it be done year-round? If you have any information about this.
So generally, the timing isn't really restricted. It's just during the tax year that those events take place. Majority of many businesses in the U.S. are organized on a cash basis and file taxes accordingly, which means when you realize the expense, this is when you actually get to write it off as an expense. Of course, the actual realization of that is a tax return when that takes place. But as far as the timing, the date has no relation to a holiday or any kind. You can be given any time. There's really no restriction on that. There's some situations where the gifts potentially may be part of the longer term project, and if you're not on a cash basis, and then you may have to realize that expense when it goes together with the project expense that it's part of. That's a bit more tricky, and I'm not going to go into those. It's a quite a complicated topic, but it's important to understand again that the type of gift and the recipient, who the recipient is. For example, if it's an employee, that's something I should probably mention on your first question. As a gift on an employee, there is no $25 limit that applies. It's actually a limit is $400 for tangible gifts. So, for example, if you want to reward the employee with a nice tangible, gift for a tangible accomplishment of some sort, or there is a service award situation where an employee deserves either a service award or recognition, you, for example, can deduct up to $400 for a tangible gift. Let's say a watch. Let's say a nice watch could be given to an employee, and then up to $400 of its value can be deducted as a legitimate expense. There's also a separate law around entertainment type gifts. And so that if you are sending someone a ticket to a baseball game, for example, a soccer game, hockey game, they get that. And if the customer or client who receives a gift gets to go to the game, that's not really tax deductible beyond $25. But if you are part of that experience and you go to the game with them, let's say you actually join the trip to the game and you actually entertain clients at the game, then that ticket to the game for you and for your customers are considered entertainment expense. And they're not limited by $25 per se, but they are part of a different way to deduct taxes. Entertainment expenses have their own tax law associated with them, and that's usually more flexible than that $25 limit. So you could find some wiggle room with that, applying those laws accordingly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's $25 in general, but if it's a gift to employees, it can be up to $500. But if it's a gift to a business partner or associate, the sum is much smaller than that. So
it's $400 limit for employees. Yeah, $400 limit for employees, $25 limit for a client. If you're part of the experience, then it's entertainment expense, and it's not limited by any particular cap. It's just like what you spend there has to be reasonable within the merit of the event, of course. But generally speaking, yes, entertainment expenses are a separate thing. They have no capped limit. The other thing that's an exception from $25 rule is a swag type of gift. So if you're sending a swag, you can actually send swag for a lot more money than $25, as long as each swag item is maximum $4. You can send multiples of that and not be limited by $25 limit per gift. Let's say you have a swag set that has $4 hoodie. There's no such hoodie for $4. So let's just say there's $4 hoodie, a $3 t-shirt, $2 pen, maybe a $2 bag, sample bag, a bunch of other things. Each of those items should not be more than $4, and you can comprise a gift that costs much more than $25, and it'll be fully deductible as long as each item is under $4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we can have an entire gift basket of swag items. Yeah,
potentially. So if you have swag, and samples are also a little bit different situation. Like if you are giving a product sample of the one you sell, that's not really necessarily a gift. It's a product sample, and that $25 limit does not apply to this.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you. Another question is quite practical. How to write off gift expenses as tax deduction? Do you have any insight into this? Some how-to tips?
Yeah, so like most things that I've described, around, categorizing information of what type of deduction that would be. Would that be a standard client gift limited by 25 cap, or would that be an employee gift? Would that be an entertainment expense that you're planning for and attributing accordingly? And you just basically have to, keep a record of those types of things. Generally, if it's a larger firm, accountants already know how to attribute those. If you're a small business or medium business that doesn't have, internal accounting and you're working with external accounting, make sure you categorize your expenses appropriately, either as a customer gift or as an entertainment expense or employee gift and so on. And when you use QuickBooks or another tax accounting software, you record it accordingly. And when your bookkeeper and accountant make sense of it, they need to understand exactly what it's going to be and how when they file the taxes for the business, how that should be attributable for your tax deduction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. I'm wondering also if this situation is any different across the globe. We received questions regarding gifts and taxes, mostly about the United States, which was a primary concern of this episode, but also about Canada, Australia, United Kingdom, New Zealand, South Africa. We have clients all over the world, and many of them are interested in this. Do you have any information about international laws applicable to gifts and taxes?
So Canada is somewhat similar to those in the US. From what I heard, there are of course some deviations from the US tax law, specifically with the amounts. I wouldn't quote myself on that. So I'm not going to go into specifically Canadian jurisdiction for that, but it's fairly similar. The UK is a bit different. They have VAT tax there, and often associated, with any of the gifting expenses, and VAT can be generally deducted. But there is no real much of a tax relief in the UK when you're making business gifts. By default, those gifts are treated as entertainment, and you basically don't have a deduction around entertainment expense the way you do in the US tax law. So, but there are exceptions. I mean, things like advertising, similar like it is in the US when we talked about swag. When you do advertising types of gifts, such as product samples, such as swag, whatever is carrying your brand, you would have a deduction. And generally, there is a £50 amount that serves as a limit. And you can play around with those numbers and learn more about that. Again, VAT is comes into play here, but I would prefer that when someone researches the law in UK, they actually do consult tax accountant. I would not feel comfortable actually personally advising outside the US.
Mm-hmm. Totally makes sense. A little side note here that in a blog post that will accompany this webinar or podcast episode, your medium of choice, we will have a block of useful resources where our content team worked hard to collect the links from the countries mentioned to the official resources on taxation for corporate gift expenses. So you can have the links and then you can research for your particular country. Sure. And the last question, but one of the most interesting in our context, is how can we help? How can Gift Baskets Overseas actually help? Let's consider a situation that the company has some budget for gifts that they want to have spent this year. However, they don't have an occasion. The budget expires December 31st or any other date of the year. And they still want to have this expense filed this year, this tax year. How can this be done with gifts in our case?
Of course, that's a great question and a popular one nowadays, where budgets do tend to shift and sometimes be cut the next year, especially in a more challenging economic climate. Oftentimes the budget of the current year is not possible to sort of shift over. And we are there to help. Actually, we are asked about that by customers quite a bit towards the end of the year. And sometimes there's no immediate need to send the gift to their customer base, but they do have an event planned, let's say in February. And sometimes they have no time to organize their list of recipients for November, let's say December. And yet they still want to make sure they have a chance to use that budget. So what we do for customers like that is we have a special way to offer a gift certificate or a store credit for the amount required. We've done it, a number of times where we would either sell a single gift certificates for just a couple of $100, and we also sold certificates for a much larger sums, tens of thousands of dollars, where a company, a business is looking to allocate that particular amount for their project next year, maybe early next year or middle of next year. And we allow that by accepting that early deposit into their account balance, and we issue a store credit note. And then the customer is able to come back and organize their delivery whenever it's convenient for them.
It sounds fantastic. Any time restrictions on this? Like how long do the customers have to spend this budget?
Generally, in our state where we are operating, in the state of Massachusetts, we have a law that requires that any business that accepts a store credit from or issues store credit to customers and accepts funds for that store credit, whether that's a gift card or a certificate or anything, it must keep that amount in escrow available for redemption for 7 years. So, we are no exceptions. So whoever you work with in our state would have to be respecting that law. And we, of course, do that, but generally, even beyond 7 years period, if somebody wanted to use a stock credit, would never say no. In most cases, that never came to that, and most customers do use their stock credit within a year or two, and that's not an issue. But if you need to take 7 years or more, be our guest. You have that option.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So let's wrap up. Gift can be tax deductible. In different countries, situation can differ, but in the United States, you have general of $25 per gift for it to be tax deductible. Different limits apply to swag gifts and to gifts to employees. People can use gifts, corporate gifts throughout the year. And if they want to have the particular budget spent this year, but actually use the gift credit next year or even beyond that, they can come to us for store credit. We will have additional links for more information on situation in different countries mentioned in questions from our customers. We will also have links to the website and information on how to request store credit from our corporate gifting team. Anything else you would like to add to?
I think you're well covered with the summary. That's great, Natasha. Thanks for summarizing everything. We're here to answer questions. And if for any particular situation, any customer has questions related to taxation around gifting, we're happy to help. We're happy to make it more clear. And when it comes to gifting across the border, we're also, happy to provide resources available and answer any questions that come up.
Sure. We will have all the links in video description and podcast episode description and on our blog. Thank you so much.